Welcome once again to the Minx Labrada Mysterious World podcast. Once again, I'll be Minx Labrada, and I'd like you to join me as we explore our mysterious world. Hey, today we're going to talk about a UFO sighting that I reported to MUFON in 2015 and have two shots of from a little photo sojourn I took out at Pensacola Beach. Something I do a lot. I like to do long shutter speed photography, abstract, light streak kind of stuff. And on this particular time, I happened to catch one of the glowing orange orb UFOs. And I do find it a bit strange. And I emailed Peter Davenport as to why the report is no longer on National UFO Reporting Center. It was investigated by MUFON, and I even met the guy that was the investigator because I included him in my mini UFO documentary that I did at Full Sail as my thesis film. It's technically not a thesis because it wasn't a master's, but that's what everyone called it because it was your final project. And they called it a true unknown. So I'm sure Peter, maybe they're just searching for server space. Maybe that was it, but I would like to find out. Or maybe it gets into the MUFON politics side of things, which there are people, my MUFON investigator guy told me there are people in MUFON that hoard reports to themselves and don't want to get them out there. So let's see if somebody tried to hoard my report. We don't know. We're going to find out. And then the reason they hoard them is because they want to get TV contracts and be on Discovery Channel. Yeah, there's a big difference between some of these people that like actively investigate things like, you know, maybe Timothy Alberino is on TV somewhere, but he actually puts his money where his mouth is. And he went to South America and he went to this San Antonio de la whatever little Amazon tributary village. Maybe not the Amazon because it's in Peru. Okay, but still, that flows a different way. But definitely Amazonian jungle type of environment when you see the video there. So that to me is a big difference from some guy that's hoarding UFO reports so he can get on Discovery and have some kind of voice that the directors seem to like, or the producers. Oh yeah, man, just keep talking like that or whatever, you know. But I don't know if you've noticed that, but the people on Discovery, some of them will have very unique ways of speaking. And then somehow that makes them an expert because if you talk in a certain way, then maybe people will want to listen, which, okay, I know you got a show to do, but there's a difference between somebody going out there and doing the work and then just, like I said, oh, look at me. I got a cool voice. And look, I'm on Discovery Channel. Woohoo, I'm an expert. Whatever, you know. Giorgio Soculis, I actually think he's rock solid. I know he does the crazy hair. And like every season of Ancient Aliens, they got a bigger budget because his hair just gets bigger and bigger. And then his outfits get a little bit more elaborate. But I did hear a speech by him once at a UFO con. And I thought it was excellent. And I thought the guy was brilliant. So, you know, if you want to go explore UFOs and, you know, push the fashion envelope, go for it. I guess that's what you do. Actually, Timothy Alberino's got his own kind of fashion thing too. So maybe we could do like a kind of like a UFO investigator fashion show. Wah! This is what the smart UFO investigator's wearing this fall, you know, patterns or just whatever, something like that. Let's go ahead and talk about Bitcoin. That's right. Technically not a sponsor, but because I am a Bitcoin holder, that means that, yeah, okay, it's kind of a sponsor. I'm promoting it. You should get it. Don't worry about the dip. Somebody said, hey, Bitcoin's down. No, it's not down. As the great Nolan said from Bitcoin Magazine, no, the network's still running. It's working fine. Somebody, in fact, I saw a tweet. Is it a tweet or an X? Whatever. You know what I mean? I saw an X this morning that read something to the effect of, oh yeah, people are saying it's down. Someone just sent $198,000, in like, and it cost them 12 cents or, or $12. It was like really cheap to send that much money. So that's the key to Bitcoin. So let's go ahead and get into where the sighting that the Marines told me about that they had. They went to Yuma Air Base. As you can see here, Yuma, I guess if you're lucky enough or smart enough to have got in the air wing and you're stationed at Yuma, then maybe you get to meet some flight attendants that work there, because it's just the whole airport, but your Marine base is part of it. So that's probably kind of okay. Now, that's not where you would go if you're Anglico. You'd probably end up there, but fly into the Yuma International Airport. But what's interesting is you have this Cannon Air Defense Complex right here, and that is MWSS Communications Platoon, Motor T. That was my first job in the Marines, was driving trucks. And yep, sure enough, there's your 5 tons. And here's some Humvees, it looks like. And yep, bunch of 5-ton trucks. And I'm sure Heavy D would be all over this if you know who that is. Now, because I was in 2nd Anglico, is what these Marines went out to go do, Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. They were going out there to call in naval air, meaning close air support from Navy and Marine Corps assets in the sky. And that would normally be like an F-18 back then, and it would be like 89. So that would have been an F-18, not a Super Hornet, but the original Hornet. And the new ones are carbon fiber mostly, and they're a little slightly bigger. Almost like they use the original as a mold for carbon fiber airframe, but it's a really good airframe. So I'm glad they're keeping it around, and it's, upgraded to the schmutz. So who knows what it's got on it now. The Blue Angels fly them. If you ever see the Blue Angels, then you'll see slightly different air intakes, or rectangular, not the kidney shape like the old one. But anyway, we would go out there. I didn't get to go, but we would send Marines out there for close air support drills. And here's an auxiliary field. I'm not sure what that is. They're a little harder zooming in and zooming out here, not having been there. But I'm assuming this is, if not now, it looks a little beat up and misused, but Marines get all the crappy stuff, so that kind of makes sense. Ooh. There's your Illuminati confirmed triangle. No, I don't know. That's just maybe, but I doubt it. That right there, those little lumps. That might be a place where you would set up and call in fire. I don't see anything that looks like a range, but that's what they were doing. They were out there on station. I found a place that looks like a range a little further out. Let's see. No, that's more of that's something going on there with flight. That's definitely. And then you can see how much of it is mosaic, or not mosaic, but parallel lined out. That they don't want to show you what's going on there. So that's definitely something they're using. Nice of Google not to give away all of our secrets. Oh, here it is. This here might be where you would call in fire from. And this looks like that could be, well, that's hard to say if that's a target that they built out there, but from the way they're describing it, they would be up on a berm. That's what this looks like here. Looking at the impact zone, which would be this big circle. And if you zoom in, there are things there to, call in fire on, like an old building, or let's see, there's another one out here that looked even better. That looks like they've been blowing up stuff there. That even looks like a target. So that might be something. And also all the pock marks and whatever that is. And if you've ever seen like old beat up military vehicles that really ancient and clearly not running out in the middle of a field somewhere, you probably don't, and they look like maybe there's a lot of damage on them, you probably don't want to go anywhere near that field because that might be a live fire. That's what you do to old stuff, is you practice calling in fire on it. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Yeah, and you can see pock marks all around here. Yep, that might be a fire area. And then I found another one that was like a city. There we go. This might actually be like where you would go and train to be, you know, what it's like to be in a Middle Eastern village. I saw them at Camp Bullis when I was in Texas working for the Army, and it's pretty cool. They do a good job. And there's also one like kind of right behind me on a base here in Pensacola. And they've got, I don't really know who it's for, but it is. And I'll show you pictures of that someday. It's just a Muslim village that they put out there. But anyway, this is where the guys were, and this is what they were doing, okay? So let's not drone on too much about... Oh, here's a kind of a weird one where these are... Like, there's a car. So what is that, like a bus? And they're just, or a mobile home, and they're in a circle, like a perfect circle. But this might be something that they would do to call fire in on. Say there's, you need to practice, you know, and there's like an old, that actually might be like a motor pool or something out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know what that is. And those look like those wall sections just all stacked up. So anyway, it doesn't matter where they were calling in fire, because I don't know exactly. Is what matters is the story that they shared with me. And let me give you a little video about how ANGLICO works, Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company, because I think it's going to help you understand, you know, these aren't just Marines. These are really highly trained spec ops guys. And their mission is to direct fire. They call it a forward air controller. And I wasn't really an expert. I was in the unit, and my first job was driving trucks for them, because that was my first job. And I ended up becoming their water safety survival instructor, and not really allowed to go on too many of the fire missions, but a few, and even some anti-terror stuff, where you learn cool things like, you know, to hold your weapon in your chest and up like that with your hand over, so you don't get a hot cartridge in the face when you release. But that, you know, you see in movies, they're all always out there like this. No. You keep it in like that. That way, if somebody jumps out and grabs you, you can just squeeze off rounds. But if it's out like this and someone grabs you, well, now you have a drama scene for a movie. The guy's, we're fighting for the gun. It's not how it works. You keep it up nice and tight. And then the other thing I'll just blurt out about anti-terror training is what they tell you is, you know, you always hear in the news, like at the last moment, the terrorist executed 4 hostages. Well, I don't know if that's ever happened or not. Is what I do know is what they told us is if you are ever in a hostage situation, stay on the ground as much as possible, because it's what happens. We don't negotiate with terrorists. And when our guys come in, they spray lead chest high. So if you're standing up, you were one of the hostages that was executed by terrorists in the last minute. That's sorry, you know, so now you know. Don't get into a conversation about anything with those guys standing up. You probably don't want to talk to them anyway if you're in hostage situations. Keep your mouth shut. Tell them nothing. But so this would be like your live fire area. And they were calling in, I want to say F-18s, but it could have been Harriers too. And even, I want to say an A5 Corsair. Is that what it is? A A6, whatever the Corsair is, the one with the big, It's got the rounded nose with the big air intake on the bottom. I got to call and fire on one of those once. And it sounds wild when it goes by the tire with all the air sucking in. You actually hear that before you hear the jet when he's coming right at you. Because we had a hotshot pilot that was buzzing the tower. So there's the setup, Yuma, Arizona. Now, they were out there for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, and they had a camp, like they had tents issued to them. They didn't stay in the barracks at MCAS Yuma, Arizona. They had like a camp far away from this, and then they had their Humvee, okay? So they did some daytime close air support. And, oh, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and watch some ANGLICO videos just to kind of give you a general idea of what they do, okay? And here we go. And I didn't share this yet. Pardon me. Now, one of the stories that they told me did happen in the daytime, and is what was going on was an F-4 Phantom flew in front of their tower, and they said it was so close, you know, the guy was looking at him and they saw the sun glint off of his mirrored visor. And the major that was with them said, well, he was a F-4 pilot in Vietnam, and he said that it was flying way too slow to be an F-4 Phantom. And there's a lot of jokes about the F-4 Phantom, you know, proof that a brick will fly if you put enough power behind it. And another thing, and you can find this for yourself, there's a list of all the different jets that have been Blue Angels, and in the back it shows their top speed. Well, by far, the F-4 Phantom topped out at like Mach 2 and change, which is way faster than anything else we've had. And their idea was to outrun the surface-to-air missiles. You know, I guess it worked sometimes. I don't know. Little scary looking jet too. Let's go ahead and just bring that up so you know exactly what I'm talking about. There we go. All right. So yeah, there's your F-4. I'm sure you've seen it. You know, and at the time when I was in the Marines, the F-4 Phantom only belonged to reserve units in the Marines. There were no active Marine Corps. This one looks like Air Force, but there were no active Marine Corps regular service F-4 Phantoms at the time. They were all reserved. So this thing comes by them, and the guy's looking at them. It was too slow. And that was, you know, that was the first thing that they noticed. It was a weird. Then they call the tower, and they say, hey, so what we didn't really see any markings on this F-4. That's another weird one. He said there's no markings on it. Do we have an F-4 on station? And they goes, you know, what do they always say? Stand by. That's military. Stand by. And no, sir. There's no aircraft on station. Nothing on radar. Meaning whatever this thing was not an F-4 Phantom, and it wasn't giving off any radar signal, which makes me think whatever the phenomenon is also able to change shape at will, and probably, I guess, read our minds. Because why would it be an F-4 Phantom in front of a bunch of Marines when their commander was, and they'd probably know who the commander was too, right? Like psychically or something. I don't know what's going on with all this, but I definitely believe there's a lot more to the phenomenon than just hardware and, you know, and pilots. There's something going on that, is way out there that we may not be ready for. And the French UFO researcher who went on to go to be a multimillionaire in Silicon Valley, I can't remember his name. I almost said Marcel Duchamp, but that's the artist. He put two things together that have never been together, and it becomes art. And, you know, and he put like a toilet seat on a frame and sold it for a lot of money. Okay, it happens. But anyway, so let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this video. Also, notice how young this Marine is. He's all of about 19 or 20. Also, notice the big giant watch. That was really still popular with jarheads.
Yeah, I'm Maria.
Okay, I'm still not getting sound through there. What is going on? I thought I had the sound connected. Oh, and then, boy, sound, and how about that? There we go. Now you can hear it. He's getting a little drink. Studying. It's a really good shot.
Suit lines 4 and 6. Call contact.
So he's got his little binos there, and that's not a piece of gear that I'm aware of. That might be a laser spotter or something. I don't know what that is.
Keep.
When I was in the laser spotter, it was like that big, and it was like 90 pounds. So 80, 89. What do you want?
So it's gonna sound like this. Hellraiser, this is Fatal FO.
So, okay, he just said Hellraiser. That's another thing. Your air asset is always going to have like a code name, and then also you will too. You don't want to be blurting out people's real names on the battlefield in case it gets intercepted. But then also, you know, really, I really don't know the real reason for that other than just personal security. And also, I never called in fire on it with a helo. That's totally different. I don't know if that's new or old or going back to old, but we never did helos. We always did fixed wing. And then there's a Cobra, you know, and it's fun. I mean, you've been to an air show. An air show is great, but let me tell you something. When you get to talk to the pilot on a radio and tell them where the bad guys are, that's way more fun. And then now it's way more high tech. And they have...
the purpose of a joint terminal attack controller is to integrate the fires that a ground force commander needs. And what we do is we coordinate with the aircraft to prosecute targets on the ground in order for him to execute his mission.
In a combat environment, a JTAC, a joint terminal attack controller, is someone who can be potentially used as a force multiplier. One, I can be the eyes and ears of a ground force commander. We can gather intel, being able to correlate targeting and pinpoint different locations of the enemy, as well as being able to coordinate attacks if need be.
What's unique about this training is that it's a very specialized job of what a joint terminal attack controller does on the battlefield. What we try to do is utilize ground, air, and every other type of fire that the Marine Corps brings to the fight.
326, 8.3. 13 feet, 2 by air.
So, you know, is what that does for you, the audience, is show you that the ANGLICO teams are first and foremost observers. In fact, one of the names of the positions is forward observer. Okay. That's normally like a radio guy, but I got to cross train with it. Wasn't as good as the guys that did it all the time, but I did get to do it. And it is fun. That whole thing in Apocalypse Now with Colonel Kurtz and having that power in the radio. Boy, let me tell you something. You do feel that is a rush. You do feel like, haha, I just, the joke back then, or the little catchphrase, because the Ma Bell was like the big telephone service, and their tagline was reach out and touch someone for their long distance. And that was big in the Marine Corps. It was like pre-cell phone, pre-internet. If you wanted to call somebody, man, you were dialing collect, right? But the reach, and then, so that was kind of like our little tagline. And then once, just joking around, I said, make a phone call, watch them burn. I mean, which is sick, but, classic Marine humor. Okay, so, the Marines that saw all that stuff, the F-4 or the Marines that do this, are excellent observers, okay? And that's their job. So when they told me this story, I believed them, and I was starting to believe the whole thing anyway. I actually went through a time in my life like even having seen UFOs in the Marines and as a child in Pensacola. There was a moment in my life in the Marines when I was like, nah, it's all fake, right? But whatever I saw was swamp gas, or I actually bought that swamp gas lie. But, you know, all these guys are, you know, highly technical professional observers. You know, the big difference today is, you know, we used to use just maps and grid coordinates, and you did see the guy there with the book with all the, right? Those are missions that he would write down, and the mission commander normally does that, or the forward air controller guy. And then some guys would have the Casio watches that were the calculator, and you could store numbers on it, and I think up to 20 different sets of numbers, and they would store grid coordinates on it and put their whole mission on their watch. Brilliant. And now all those guys have like a phone type of thing, some kind of tough smart pad. I do buy the militarized type phones. You see how thick that is? Who knows what they're using, but that it's a whole different ball of wax now. They set up satellite dishes and everything, but they're still calling in fire. So anyway, these people are highly technical, highly trained. So after the story about the F-4 being weird, like the Phantom, F-4 Phantom, almost like literally, right? What the hell is this? And it goes away or whatever. And then they have, like the next day, they do a nighttime close air support operation. And that's, you know, different because you have to spot your targets at night, and whatever they're doing to identify them, laze them or whatever, with it like an infrared laser. And then a laser guided bomb turns its little fins or whatever and comes and finds it. You know, I used to think the laser guided bomb, that the laser was on the bomb. No. The laser picks up that dot. It's called painting a target. Okay. So they're there, and then what, you know, and it's the desert and it's at night, and all of a sudden they just kind of, you know, get illumination behind them. Enough to where like they're having shadows. And the first reaction was the guy to say, hey, you know, turn off the Humvees, because it would have had to have been all of them, you know, all at once with all the lights. What are y'all doing? You're killing our night vision. You know, there's little tricks you learn in the Marines too, like when a flare goes up, to cover one eye with a hand, and right? And that way when the flare goes away, you know, one eye still has night vision. And that's a trick I do when I drive too, and there's someone with brights on. I'll close one eye, and I'll even try to cover it up if I can, but definitely just closing one eye helps keep your night vision. So, you know, that's important when you're doing close air support, is your night vision. So they, you know, they're like, hey, cut that out. And they turn around, and behind them, and as you can see here, they said behind them was Mexico. They said there were mountains to the front, so that must have been around here somewhere, right? Must have been somewhere around in this area. They said there were mountains to the front, and behind them was just open desert, okay? And then, wow, look at that, the Gulf of Mexico. And you probably wouldn't even see these from where you are, and these aren't as big, right? So behind them, they're just saying was open desert, and I guess they didn't realize the Gulf of Mexico too. But apparently, there were 5 lights, boom, 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 bright. And he just said they were white lights, which, okay. And then after a while, they just kind of like forgot about them, and they continued their close air support. So whatever this thing is checking this out, okay? And then another guy said, you know, I asked him about the UFOs out at Yuma, and he goes, oh yeah, he goes, you know, we were like, oh, look at that, you know. So there was stuff streaking around and flying around too that maybe he saw that maybe some others didn't. But everybody reported the 5 lights and the whole thing. And then, so they finished their close air support operation, and then they drove back to their base camp where their tents were. And this one sergeant that I was friends with told me that right when they turned off all the Humvees. Like it was a staggered thing, right? And then he said is what happens was one disappeared, and as soon as it was gone, it reappeared over here, which is that interesting phenomenon, whatever they do, whatever they have. And another thing I found looking at this map is near Yuma and near where this live fire range was, there's something called zigzag ancient tracks. And if you zoom into that, look at this. Oops, what happened? What are you doing to me, Google Maps? Here we go. Zigzag ancient tracks. Where are we? Jeez Louise. Was this a conspiracy theory now? And they're like working against me? I was just there. Zigzag ancient tracks. I know y'all saw it too. Then I clicked on this thing to try to make it smaller. And there, that's what I wanted to do. There, zigzag ancient tracks. So I could get a bigger picture for you. Jeez Louise. But as you can see, they're calling this ancient tracks, and it vaguely resembles what they said they saw if you take each diamond to be a light. And maybe there are no photos of it on the ground. But I just find that very peculiar that an ancient, like normally you think of these ancient tracks as only in Peru, the Nazca lines, but apparently we have them here in North America as well. No, this looks a little bit more, maybe the big lines or something, but that a lot of it looks just like ground tracks, ground vehicles. And who knows how much smuggling, human trafficking is going on there. Boy, there's something else. So that's something ancient. So maybe this is, something we need to investigate. Hopefully it's not destroyed now with all the, here's some more circles. Yeah, that's pretty weird down there. That's definitely weird. That could just be off-road stuff, but yeah, that I could see how that would be mysterious and strange. But definitely these big lines here, that also looks like a DNA strand. You know, a lot of weird stuff going on there with that. So, for weird stuff to be going on while you're calling in live fire, like behind what they said was behind them at the Mexico border, and for those lines to be there, that just tells me that something's been going on there for a long time, not just when the Marines are out there. And, who knows? What is this here? Something with a fence around it. I don't know. They're all kind of radar stuff and secret stuff that you don't have any business knowing anyway out there. And I steadfastly, as much as I have an interest in about this stuff, I also steadfastly hold that the stuff that is top secret that could do grave damage to our country if released to the public, don't disclose that. Don't ask for that to be disclosed, because again, we saw what the savages did with just trucks driving over bridges and driving through Christmas villages in Europe. So do you really want that mindset? God told me to kill you all to have that kind of technology? I don't think we do. All right. That would be their ultimate kill. And they'd be so proud of themselves that they killed all the bad guys, but they'd end up killing themselves too. I have a feeling that technology, people were talking about a technology that could vibrate the earth apart. Just blow up the planet. Blah. That's, That's not going to do anybody any good. Not even the person that did it, where you have to live somewhere, right? So that's that story. And I find it 100% credible. And also it's the kind of story that makes me wonder and question a lot of the stories that are on Discovery, you know, by the hoarders, because this is a story with multiple witnesses, all trained observers, some pilots, some forward air observers, all Marines, right? All shooting at least marksman. There's marksman, sharpshooter, and expert. I mean, of course, I always shot expert, but hey, it was really fun, the rifle range. But what I'm saying is a lot of good peepers, a lot of binoculars. Unfortunately, no digital cameras or digital video or any video of any kind. But with the way CGI is today, for me today, the most credible evidence is anecdotal evidence from trained observers, from people, especially that are trained to not only call in fire, but also look in the air and immediately identify what aircraft it is, so they know they're talking to the right person. Because you'll see the F-18 coming in over the trees, and you're like, okay, I got you, sir. You're like low and to the west, and then he'll go whatever they say, and then he's like popping and popping. He comes up and he does like a big corkscrew, but is what he's doing. He's getting upside down and he's looking up, which is down because he's upside down. So he looks down at the ground like that. And then he physically gets an eyeball on the target. And then he comes back around and drops the ordnance. So people that can do all that and then direct that on the radio, and they're telling me they saw UFOs. Yeah, they didn't see anything conventional. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into one of my reports. This happened at Pensacola Beach, August of 2015. Again, I did report this to the National UFO Reporting Center. And before I started the show, I emailed Peter Davenport, who's the director of the National UFO Reporting Center, basically explaining, hey, this was investigated, said to be a true unknown. You know, I didn't say what gives. I have more respect than that, but that's just the gist of it. You know, what happened to the report? So here we go. And I like to do long shutter speed exposures with a DSLR that I have. And on this one, I did it just to make the lights kind of glow, just to kind of give you where I was, what I was doing. And the sky was not blue to my eye. That's the exposure of, like, say 10 seconds, allowing the sky to glow a bit. And it's a fun effect. You know, it was all dark, but you let that chip take in just a little bit of light that's there for 10 seconds, and this is what you get. And then there were some hippies at the beach, and in the background there, you could see a guy, I guess he's running with a cell phone or something, or a flashlight, and you could see the streak. And then this hippie here, he was spinning around like a fire dancer kind of guy, right? And you could see this flash here in the corner was taken at the same time, and how bright and streaky that is. And I forgot what the exposure was on this. I go up to 30 seconds sometimes. But this was probably 15 seconds. I'm not sure. And here's another kind of a hippie girl spinning around, just to kind of give you an idea of what I was doing and what the camera was capable of doing. But now, and then also you could take like a self-portrait. And I think this was 30 seconds. And you can see how blue the sky looks, but that is night. But what I did is I snapped it. I ran out in front of the camera, and then just stood there for the remainder, and it gives you that, which is fun. So you could do ghost pictures just for fun. And you could do light streak type stuff your own. This was me with a flashlight and spinning it around in front of the camera. And in one of these, there's a guy laying down drunk. I think that's it. I found him later. That happens. Pensacola Beach, a beer run at night. You might see a drunk, just, working it off. And then you can do stuff like this, fully abstract. I'll point the camera at some lights and I'll just shake it around or move it to get these abstract images. Just something fun to do. But on this certain occasion, I was just doing a still and I forgot what my exposure was again. It is backed up on Flickr, and Flickr records the exposure, I think. I think it's in the metadata, and so I could get that for you if you want to see. And I didn't even really, I mean, I did see this thing, but it was small, but I saw it first, and again, it was one of those situations where I was a little bit too blown away to change the settings or to zoom in. And it wasn't much of a zoom anyway. I think it was like an 18 to 55. Maybe 55 would have been a lot better, but here I was wide shot. And it's up here. I know that doesn't seem like much, but it's a 6,000 by 4,000 megapixel image. So, or pixel image. So I'll be able to, I zoom into it and show you more detail. And then the second shot is, it like just appeared, and it how they flicker. And when I zoom in, you can see how it came out from behind a cloud, and then it moved for a bit. And on the second one, because it was moving, it stretched the light a bit. And then down here on both images, you can see these lights here are just artifacts of doing long shutter speed photography. And this matches up with this, and this matches up with that. And these three lights match up somewhere down here. I forgot exactly where. It all correlates. And I'm not exactly sure how refraction, the science of it. I know what it does, and that's what's happening here. I'm getting like a refracted image through the lens. And then if you notice, this is a unique light source and how it moves, and these don't really move. Notice that? These don't really move, but that sure does a lot, okay? All right, so let's go ahead. And now this is what I was talking about. When you zoom in, you could see that sharp edge right there. And for those of you just listening, I'm using a kazoo as a pointer. But if you could see that hard edge, and that's this light emerging just past this cloud, and really zoomed in here, and it's a more pixelated, but and I put this arrow here, you could definitely see that hard edge with this amber light. Once again, the amber and/or rose-colored lights. It's really fascinating. And there's my big zoom. And there again, even more pronounced. Even though it's pixelated, you could see that hard edge where it is emerging from behind a cloud. Here I reversed inverted the image, so you get in like a negative. And again, that line's very defined. Zooming in too. And the other thing too is the more pronounced here is the splash light or fall off light. I think is what you call that. That is what you call that, fall off light, where your main source and then fall off is as it fades away. And look how defined that edge is, where there's almost no fall off light and really none right at the edge, and where there is where it's not emerging from the cloud. That to me is fascinating. And that was what really, I think that's what pushed the MUFON guy over the edge and was like, all right, this is a true unknown. There it is again. And on this one is what I did is I boosted the shadows and illumination. And then zoomed in with that. And there again, you're seeing even a harder edge here where it's coming out. A little bit more fall off light, but you could definitely see where it's emerging out from behind something. Yeah. Here I'm showing where there's definitely a difference between this light here, which is a unique light source, and there's a refracted light from this hotel and all that stuff there. Well, they're all hotels. It's Pensacola Beach. And this is the inversed image of that. You could definitely see how these reflected lights in the inverted image are kind of, they're not black because it's not a solid light. It's not a solid object. Okay. Where the really strong light source from this hotel is black, and then that's black too, where the refraction is not. Okay. There again, I'm showing this refraction, most obviously coming right from there. Not UFOs, refractions. That is the UFO up there. And here it is on the move. This was the second shot I took, and it didn't become an oblong shape to the naked eye. That was the 15-second shutter speed or something I had on it. Maybe 10 seconds. I'll find out for sure and share that with y'all if anyone's interested. Here I am zooming in a little more. And the more you zoom in, I'm not 100% sure if this is an artifact of the pixels, but you start to see what looks like portholes on the edge of something here. And if that's the case, well, then this goes back to the porthole UFOs from Gulf Breeze, the ones that Ed Walters claimed he saw and has a picture of. But I also think he probably faked a lot of them and made up a bunch of tall tales. Also, the UFO that a very good, well, he used to be a good friend of mine's father told me about, and that guy's gone, which stinks. But, you know, he was out in a van with a group of real estate people in a place that's now Portofino when we had a bunch of sand dunes before Ivan blew them away. And there's a big sand dune called Sugar Bowl. And it was about a 15 some odd passenger van. He said they all had time to get out, poke each other and say, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" And he said it had, it was like 2 buses tall and 3 buses wide and had 2 rows of portholes on it. What is that? That's the Ed Walters. And that was before I ever heard of Ed Walters or the whole Gulf Breeze incident ever went down. So whatever this thing was, it was, you know, scope. Maybe they're the Portofino developers. I don't know. This big condo complex out of the beach. The only one, well, not the only one, but everyone in Pensacola is really thankful that it doesn't look like Destin. Let's put it that way. Destin's, you know, it's for the tourists. There is some public beach access, but wow. Here again is the inverted image, and you could still see those kind of like porthole type things on there, if that is in fact what it is and not a artifact. Here it is starting to kind of look more like an artifact. I've never zoomed in that extreme, and you could see the extreme jagged pixelation, so you're losing all kinds of information there. So that's not really that reliable, other than you know, when you get into, well, that helps a little bit, the inverted image where you could start to see the portholes again. And then I put even arrows there. Not 100% sure if that is what that is. Would like to find out one day. Not sure if we'll ever will find out. And then this one I did with your brightness contrast and or your shadows and on your exposure setting. So I boosted shadows and I boosted light to get this really hard contrast, and it gives a bit of a shape to the thing. I guess in the Z or the X axis, not just the Y axis, but there again, there are different little undulations in there that again might be portholes. And, you know, who's to say that when you fire up some kind of big electromagnetic motor that it doesn't make the whole thing glow ions, you know, which I thought was supposed to be blue, but maybe whatever frequency they're running or whatever their motor does turns them rosy or amber, like we see here. I really appreciate your time today on the Minx Labrada Mysterious World podcast. Once again, I am Minx Labrada. This is our mysterious world. I really appreciate your time today. And don't forget, we will persevere because it's always another great day in America. Thanks for your time.